Welcome everybody to Changing of the Hip Hop Guards. I'm the journalist Sincere. That's my partner Uncle E. And tonight we have the pleasure of speaking with B Love from the legendary JVC Force. Thank you so much for joining us this evening.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Thank you for having me, gentlemen. Thank you for having me.
No doubt, no
Absolutely,
doubt.
it's our pleasure. This year, Doing Damage turns 35. Dropped in 1988. Let's go back and revisit that, everything that went into it, your best memories. If you can just catch us up on how the JVC Force was formed back in the day.
Well, yeah, JVC Force was formed back in the days as friends, actually. Me and Kurt went to school together. He was the first person I met when I came to Long Island. I was about 5 years old. I believe he was 4 years old. We went to a school in Long Island called Cordello. I sat next to him in the classroom, and he was the first person I actually met, like I said. And our journeys separated after that year of of school as youngsters. Went on to other schools. He remained in other schools, and I actually around that time, about a less than a year after meeting Kurt, because I was new in the neighborhood, I met AJ. Um, and I met AJ when I was about 5, 6 years old, and we became friends, and we remained friends. Me and AJ through the years, of course, as everybody in hip hop probably knows, we have a brotherhood. Again, if it wasn't for music, we'd still be brothers, but we remained friends. I picked back up with Kurt around, I want to say about the high school years. I was a DJ at the time, going all through, junior high school, and I met Kurt. And when we got into high school, we started to form this thing called JVC Force. And in the beginning, it was JVC, and there were certain things that caused us to have to change it to JVC Force. But we started to form the JVC Force, and I say the JVC Force because even from the beginning, like when we used to rehearse, and we were just JVC. It's all of the things that made us who we were. We literally rehearsed every single day. But picking back up with Kurt in high school, um, I spent some time with him at times that I didn't spend with AJ because AJ was back and forth to Mount Vernon most of the time. So I spent some time with Kurt. AJ was coming back out to Long Island on the weekends. Um, Me and Kurt pretty much came up with the acronyms and everything else for JVC Force, justified by virtue of creativity. And then for the Force, we decided for obvious reasons concerning entertainment. Um, each of our names had, me and AJ, we had both our names had acronyms to them. His was Amazing Juice. Mine was Be Loved, the best love in the universal vicinity. Um, and we have fun with it, but most importantly, we formed a group, and the group was formed based on friendship because at the time, these are the folks that again our parents knew each other. Our parents were partying together. uh, Kurt and my mom, they were nurses. AJ spent so much time at my house. My sister actually met AJ's sister before I met AJ, and the different components of it all is it's a friendship. Perhaps lyric, perhaps rap wise, I don't know that I ever probably would have picked up a mic with anyone but AJ. Believe it or not, though most of the lyrics were written by myself, AJ was still, he was still challenging. He was my second half when it came to taking the mic. So there were important parts of it that came with it all, and there couldn't be a JVC without, us wanting it. Um, like normal kids, rehearsing every day, perfecting our craft, and upon dropping the Doing Damage album, those were some of the routines that we polished and that we spit in parties as we came up. So, you know, the group the group was built on house parties, like I said, and just doing a lot of things together. But when AJ came back and we started taking the mic together, that's when professionally we started feeling like, we can try to do something. And you know, we tried to do it. And I want to mention that even though AJ and I got together, there was still a song that was shopped already prior to, us signing as JVC Force, which it was the new school.
Mm,
JVC Force didn't get signed for Strong Island. JVC Force was signed for the new school. Um,
mm,
Along with the concept of the new school at that point in time, it was just discussed with the label that, hey, I have a rap partner. And, they started talking about, what is going to be the flip side of, the new school. We said, well, we're working on a song called, Strong Long Island. And, it's later got broken down to just being Strong Island. And, when they heard it, they told us record it right away. Um, they kind of knew what beat it was because we played the Free the Pains for them and stuff. So they knew we had something working. The magic of it all is that we would record that song and it would become an anthem. A song that's strong enough to stand up to any of the anthem songs that's out there, and most importantly, a song that was signed by a label from the South Bronx and gave us the opportunity to be label mates with the legendary BDP in full fashion at that time. I believe Scott LaRock had just passed away or something or the other, but um, the opportunities were great. It gave us a sense of respect. We knew that again, the competition in Long Island was really, really, really thick. But again, we felt as though we got signed by a South Bronx label, and at that time, folks wasn't really looking at Long Island. So we did it together, and we did it through love. And I don't think that we could have did it any other way than together at that time because the Doing Damage album was an album that was based on like all of our heart, all of our hard work, and all of our practicing, and you know
mm.
that's how it was.
Did just like you touched on, coming from Long Island, I know especially back at around that time, it was, even though there was a lot of artists and there were groups that were from Long Island, it
Hmm.
felt like they were. I felt like Long Island wasn't getting the love or the respect that it should have at that time from the other boroughs. How was it for you guys being from Long Island, like you said, going onto a label in the South Bronx? What was the reception like from your peers and artists, around the area?
Well, it's I think it's the same feeling at that time that every kid that was wanting to rap and wanting to have their shot on the radio felt. It was like looking in from a window and realizing that the party is inside of the building, but you're on the outside of the window and you can't get in the party.
Right, right, right.
you know, it's
Right.
so it felt like we weren't accepted
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact that we lived in the suburbs, because we had houses,
Hmm.
because cars drove the speed limit. you know, we because of normal life, being surrounded by beaches, just different things. I think made folks to feel that Long Island wasn't a place that really could tell the story of hip hop.
Right,
Like
right, right, right,
how could you be from suburbia and tell a story of inner city blues?
right.
Most folks in Long Island, believe it or not, was moved out there by their parents from
From
the
the boroughs.
Brooklyn and the Bronxes,
Hmm.
and believe it or not, in some times of the year, Long Island is way wilder than some of the boroughs.
Oh yeah.
Um, it's too many places in Long Island that you can go and get caught up. Every town has a bad strip.
Yep.
Um, in our case, back in the days in CI, it was Carlton Park, and I've been all over the world and I've been different places, and I give Carlton Park like almost the equivalent to like Cabrini Green.
Mm.
I don't give a lot of Brooklyn projects the credit that I give like to Cabrini Green because I've been in Chicago probably 3 times a year, like for years. It's just that place was something different, you
Right.
know. But again, CI had Carlton Park, and places like Brentwood had Regis Park, and it was these places that the further you went out on Long Island, for anybody that knew Long Island, it was the wilder that it got.
Yeah, yeah,
Um,
yeah.
and but most important, because there wasn't so much to do, there was always crews
Mm-hmm.
as far as you went out on Long Island. So, Long Island fought to get their foot in the door. When we did the Doing a Damage album, I don't think that we ever expected, worldwide fame and or anything like that. We always simply wanted was our spot on the radio. We
Right.
wanted to be heard. When we started going on tour and we started realizing, like, we got a spot. It's still really kind of honestly, it wasn't enough still.
Mm-hmm.
Um, there were still groups that was in Long Island that had to come through the door. There were still groups that wasn't getting the opportunity to be heard. Strong Island is a record that allowed certain labels to realize, hey, you know what, I need to take a chance on the artist out there. Something's going on out there.
Mm. Right.
It came out with a unique sound, but most important, it opened up doors for other artists, and you know, some of those artists became really, 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 really big groups in the legend in the golden age of hip hop. You
Right.
know, and they're starting back about 86. 85, 86. Biz and Swan came out. Rakim came out with Eric B and Rakim.
Mm-hmm.
Public Enemy came out. EPMD came out. K Solo came out. Well, JVC Force came out. Then K Solo came out, and then
Mm-hmm.
the groups just started coming at that point in time. Then you got your leaders, your De La Souls, your leaders of the new schools. You got your yeah, and it kept trickling on and on and on and on the behalf of CI. Then there was the Craig Macks, the Keith Murrays. On labels that were big, the biggest labels. So Long Island, again, it felt like but to make a long story short, it felt like everybody else, feeling like we were shunned.
Mm-hmm.
But when we finally got our foot through the door, I think that I think it was undeniable that musically, we were exposed to more, and we were going to change the game, going through what we were doing with the sampling era.
Mm-hmm.
So I didn't. I used to feel bad. I even went to college, like I said, and I shopped the demo and didn't hear nothing for like almost like 7 or 8 months, and then one day we just got a call, and you know, but like I say, even getting that call, Long Island still had to be solidified as a place, and the feeling was always that we were looked down on.
Right.
When
Right.
it
Right.
came
Right.
to, we
Was
went we
that
went to. Hmm? Hmm.
so? The song that you shot for 7, 8 months that you didn't hear back from, was that New School?
Yeah, that was new school. Like I said, we went to college. I went to college. When I left upstate, we had already shopped that song to about 15 labels, put the CD inside the manila envelope, wrote the note, sent it off as a cassette. And like I said, several months later, it was about, I know it was the winter time. It was about November or December, because I remember it was hell coming from upstate New York and the Catskills coming down to the Bronx. It was snow. But it was several months later, and we got a call that they wanted to talk to us about the song "The New School," and we decided, yeah, we're gonna go down there. We went down there that night, and that night they had contracts waiting for us. They signed us, and they started asking us what was going on with a flip side for that song, and we told them again we were working on a song called "Strong Long Island." It wasn't ready yet, but the lyrics were done. We had the beat. We just had to record it in the studio, and we played the two Free to Pain beats, and I started to spit the lyrics. And at that time that I started spitting the lyrics, again they were written in singular form because we weren't officially a three-man group as yet.
Mm.
We practiced. We were a street crew still, but the CD, or I should say the cassette, being picked up by the label now, it still wasn't a guarantee that AJ was going to be the three-man situation.
Mm.
It was still revolving around Kurt and I.
Ah,
And At that time, it was still revolving around Kurt and I because we were JVC. We started forming that through high school. But technically, when the new school was recorded, it was recorded in a recording booth at Six Flags on the senior class trip. And I didn't have Kurt Cazal in there with me. I had a partner of mine named Rob Stinger who knew how to do the beatbox at the time. So he was doing the beatbox. So the original demo was going to get signed or was getting signed for, the project that we had did at the senior class trip at Six Flags Great Adventure with the beatbox.
Yeah, that's
When,
dope.
yeah, right. When we got down to the and one thing about myself, me and these guys, we had did so much all through our life to become a crew and try to become noticed. When we went down to the label, even though it was a song that was just based on a beatbox and a rapper, we went back into the studio and I think, we went ahead and we redid it with like, the disco circus sample and stuff like that. And,
Mm,
and again, Strong Island was written in a singular form. Spit it for the label. I spit it for the label and let the label, hear what it was going to be. And, you know, I said, I have a partner and stuff like that. And, we do a lot of things together. And importantly, what I want to say is it's not really just about the fact that, um, the song was signed and, Strong Island was written in the singular form and stuff. It's a lot of chemistry that me and AJ had from like, the routines we had on the block. Now, remember, like I said, New School got signed, but JVC Force was still doing a lot of practicing and stuff. So
mhm.
again, a lot of the routines that we had, a lot of things that appeared on the Doing Damage album, they were things that we had already rehearsed. A had a certain amount of rhymes. I think that at that time, my rap style was moving a lot faster than probably his.
Okay.
But either way, we always figured out a way to make the chemistry work. If I had to write a song and it was at the time like I would call it a very complicated song, um, I would put it on a cassette. And what I would do is that I would write the lyrics out on a piece of paper and I would break them up every 4 lines. I'd give myself 4 lines, I'd give him 4 lines. I'd take four and we'll harmonize here and there. But either we kept doing it until we perfected it. And then as we started doing it at times, we say, hey, you know what, like no holds bar on the way we're gonna deliver these lyrics, like just come in whenever you're gonna come in. And the whole feeling and the force behind it again was to, be two people and sound like, the Cold Crush Four, their
Hmm.
harmonizing was impeccable,
Right,
so
right, right.
you had to come in. And because we were two people, we never really to be a little bit more unique, we never really came in a lot of times only on the top of the lyric, but certain words in between, like to just kind of catch it. And so, it's a lot of polishing that went into that, man. But again, with the chemistry that the group had, you know, we we couldn't have did it without each other at that time. And
Mm.
you know, friendship goes a long way, man.
Right, right. That's dope. How, where did you, or how did you even come up with the idea of doing that? As far as you have the rhymes, but let me break it up. These amount of bars, and how did that even come to your mind to do that?
I I first seen the hip hop, to be honest with you, in the Bronx. And again, when hip hop first came out, like everybody else, it took your life by storm.
Hmm.
You probably stopped studying in school. But it's writing and really being possessed with it, like coming through the years of living in Brooklyn before moving to Long Island, seeing the legendary tags all over, like the Aqueduct Bridge
Hmm.
by like the legendary rest in peace, like Dondi and
Right.
people like that, and just really seeing like real life stuff and understanding like, yo, this is what I want to do. Even before these guys became widespread, I was getting possessed with this. Um, I started seeing the crews in Brooklyn. I witnessed a battle in Soundview in the Bronx,
Hmm.
and I knew this was real stuff. Most important, when I came and I moved to Long Island, I started seeing that crews were existing in Long Island. Like, this thing called hip hop, it was traveling. It was never going to be as big as like one person or anything like that. It was always going to turn around and it was going to grow.
Right.
Um, got to Long Island, started seeing people out there doing different things, trying to go ahead and display their artistry. Got to see Biz Markie. I believe I want to say it was around like 1979 when I first seen him take the beatbox for the first time um, as a boy. And nobody really understood at that time in Long Island what the beatbox was and stuff like that. But a lot of artistry was coming through Long Island that was filtering through the city.
Hmm.
You know, couldn't be stopped. Hip
Right.
hop, hip hop was never going to be able to be stopped at that point in time. So,
Right. Right.
You talked a little about the creative process of Strong Island. At what point did you see it catching momentum? Where were you at the first time you heard it on the radio? Just give us a little background of when that song started to take off.
man, New Year's Eve night, one night, we had recorded it in the studio, and I remember the night when we recorded it that we decided that night we were going to drop the lyrics and we were going to mix it down that same night. Like for better or for worse, we were mixing it that night. Um, when we mixed it down and we listened to the final master, like coming through the big speakers, it felt like something really, really special. I knew all of us, I remember as young kids, we all had money because we had just, signed a contract, gotten a little change, and we're in the studio with liquor bottles, throwing money in the air, taking pictures. The song came out. The funny thing about it is that, when we heard the master, we listened, and about 2 months went by. We still weren't hearing nothing, and we was like, man, here we go. The radio still don't like. It's gonna be hard. We from Long Island. We got a record deal, but and then it was like a New Year's Eve night, 1988, and 87 going into like 1988, and it was like 11:59, and Red Alert like counted down for the ball to drop, and
Right.
then he went ahead at like midnight, and it's like he dropped Strong Island, and we were all like in the middle of a New Year's Eve, like we all had champagne bottles was gonna enjoy all night and everything. So when he put that on the radio and he played it, man, it kind of it started to it felt good that night, but it started to hook on around Long Island because as Red Alert played it, um, the more and more he did, then the Mr. Magics and the Marley Marls and them, they would start playing, and they'll be playing it like 3 and 4 times in a row. Like the record had like a unique sound. It was different than what was on the radio at the time. It just had a different sound. When you heard the horns coming, you knew it. So it caught on, and life in Central Islip and going around wherever the different towns, it never really changed a lot because we were always a down to earth group. So we took it as it came, man. But there were nights that people would pass the house 2 o'clock and 3 o'clock in the morning, blasting the record, and you know there were times that we would go on tour and come off a tour, and we're running the people in the streets, and we just. But I mean, it was Long Island was always really, really normal, man. I think some of the greatest things about Long Island groups is that I don't feel like, me personally, I don't feel like I had any right to, you know, be uppity when it came to my music and the people I brought my stuff when groups like Public Enemy, Flavor Flav and Chuck D, they were embracing us when we so I mean, it was a great time, and it made us feel really, really good, man.
Where? Who? Okay, talking about the production. How did you guys come up with the whole production? And whose idea was it to use those horns? What was the process for that?
It was a strange concept because I was at college. I was at college. So what happened is somewhere around the interim, I believe it was that AJ knew about the record,
Mhm.
but he didn't have the record.
Okay.
My father now, who every known to the world as Double Frida, rest in peace,
Okay.
has a very, very wicked music collection.
Mm.
So my father now, just upon AJ just saying the name of the song, saying like, I think it's like Free Pain or something, or no, AJ says something like, I think it's like the easiest way to fall. Or my father pulled the record out, gave him the record, gave them the record, and it was determined that this was the record we was going to use. Now, the process at that time was that Kurt would get the record if wherever he got it from. At this time, he got it from my father. He would take it, sample it up, um, send me a cassette through the mail or something like that to where I was in school, and I would hear like the tracks and start to write to the tracks that I like. So when we heard that song, I was like, "Yeah, that's wicked. That's it. That's the banger." But the problem is that it was Kurt had produced a record to a certain level where he sampled the Free Pain, but
Okay.
then he took the Temptations under the boardwalk and he put it over. And
Ah.
me and him fought tooth and nail over that because writing at the time, for me, beats that are like really, really, really catchy has
Mhm.
always like stayed in my head. And I was always like, this needs, it just needs something else. It needs, so think we were probing, or my father came back again, or something like that, and was like, here's another. However, it happened. The horns came. I
Mm.
remember the debate between me and Kurt. It was either I was rooting for the Free the Pain horns, and he was rooting for the Temptations, the Under the Boardwalk.
Oh,
And
shit. Okay.
we went back and forth for weeks almost until like we weren't even going to turn around and probably do it because
Oh
we were going
wow.
back and forth so bad. Um, but we stuck it out. But most important, when we did, and we said, okay, we're going to use the horn. Kurt finally gave in. We used the horns. Now, around that time, when it came time to record the song, I was home.
Mhm.
Um, the mix of the song and how the things bang out, um, like the accents in the mix of the strong. I
Right.
like
Right.
it, like bam, 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 bam. That's like me and Kurt being in the studio. Kurt's behind the board, and I'm behind Kurt, like, yeah, yo, yeah. And even with the scratches and stuff, like there was so many times that it was like, man, kill them whack scratches, man. Like you need to knife that shit up, dude. Like listen to the
Right.
beat.
Right. Right.
Listen to the beat. Like that's Von Mason, dude. Like listen to Like how do you cut it up in our practices, but then you come into the studio and you want to follow a format. Um,
Right. Right.
there were times that like once or twice that like both of us were scratching to create like a different effect, and but again, it's the charge forward attitude of JVC. The attitude to never conform to the industry. Um, what we felt in our hearts, what we felt on the streets. As the years were going by, um, my lyrics started taking like a different kind of turn. They were no longer like fun, and we started rapping about just different stuff going on. But we challenged each other every part of the way, and even when it came to AJ, like I said, the stories that no one really ever probably would tell. The years that like AJ basically overslept, man, for every practice, every studio session. Can't tell you the amount of times I had to run around the corner in my pajamas, man, to go ahead and like get him up. And it's always like, and I got to thank him so much, man, as a rap partner, because throughout all of the years when somebody could have turned around and really given up, or not really believed, AJ, for every time I came around that corner to wake him up, you know what I mean? He got up passionately to go ahead
Right.
and
Right.
try to,
Right.
go over his rhymes and stuff. And don't get it wrong, neither one of us are dancers or anything like that. But we rehearsed, and we tried to do a lot of things. But even in the days that I know, like, this guy was tired, or he, had a lot of stuff going on, he woke up, and but
Mm.
again, it's we had rules within JVC. We paid dues, and we had to make it to rehearsals. Otherwise, you stood a chance of being put out. You had to be dedicated, and we
Mm.
that's how we operated, and we had fun with it.
That was kind of my next question. The sessions, you kind of alluded to AJ oversleeping, but chemistry wise, what were those sessions like? Were they, the chemistry there? Was it, easy? Was it hard? What were those sessions like creating that album?
The sessions were easy because there's no song on the Doing Damage album that took more than 4 hours to record. Like I said, the amount of practicing that we had did on our own in Kurt's garage, in my garage, the sample friendly era that we was coming through, there was a lot to choose from. Um, so back then, as long as, like, you went into the studio and you had your lyrics down and stuff like that, and where you was gonna, a song didn't take more than 4 hours like that. When we went into the studio back then, even to record Strong Island and to record a lot of different records, the only form of looping that existed was known by Charlie Murata,
Mm.
which was to take the tape off of to take the half-inch
What, to
tape
run it
off of the
around?
reel-to-reel and run it all around the studio on a pencil. And later on, for everybody that remembers, later on, that because Charlie Murata, I think he had Lynn drums and all of that type stuff. But the looping in Long Island, it was a pencil going all the way around the studio to the doorknob, and
Right,
with the tape just going and going. And Charlie was a master tape cutter when it came to looping. Um, so it was a lot of what we got to use, the era that we came through. It was for us, like I said, we went into the studio 4 hours, we knocked it out. Because again, it was simply you loop the beat, you go in and drop the lyrics, drop some ad libs, drop some scratches. Hip hop wasn't that difficult back then. You know what I'm saying? It could be done in 8 tracks.
mm.
And in some cases it was. So we went into the studio, and for every routine that we kind of had, that we had polished, and don't get me wrong, there were some songs that were written that it had to be memorized and it had to be, spit. But for a lot of the routines that we had, like songs like oh, I'm putting my own self on the spot, because Strong Island was written, and it was cut up and it was broken up to be a two-part song. Doing Damage was done the same way. Um, it was written as a one-part song cut up to be performed by two. Take It Away was the same way. Um, You Like It Too. Um, that was a skit, but I mean the same way. Style and lyrics, just about everything was broken up at that time, for AJ to go ahead and spit. I think around the second album is when he started to spit certain lines, and the lines that we perfected through the years, like on his behalf, when he says, an entrepreneur, rhyme connoisseur, never a bore, because I'm a rapper that you can adore. I get, so from,
Mm.
even after you shut the front door. And so those are lyrics that, all through our life, we were spitting in the party. We were going back and forth. AJ don't stand for Applejack. Come equip if you want, because we love got my back. Kirk
Mm.
Cazal's on the cut like a frontal attack. And then, but again, none of these songs took more than 4 hours at a time, like I said, because of how polished at the time we were. We were hungry, hungry, hungry. The challenges always come in after the first album.
Mm.
I want to say every artist that I pretty much heard, I could fairly say that they had great, great, great first albums, and the second albums weren't as great as the first albums, because the first albums was what they lived with like all their life up to that point.
Right,
The
right, right.
challenge, the, the challenge is the sophomore album, when you have to sit down and you have to write.
Mhm.
You know,
come up
but
with
like
the
I said,
concepts and thinking of something. Right, right. I see what you mean because
yeah,
you've been practicing and writing and doing all these type of things. So by the time you do that first album, you've been sort of carrying this with you already.
right,
But then
right.
once that
So,
stops and that whole process, and now you got to go to that next one, it's like, well, what are we
mhm,
writing about?
right. So what do you
Yeah.
do? What do you do now when you're about to write a second album? Um, and all of the groups that come from where you come from, let's Long Island, let's say.
Hmm.
You got about 10, 12 groups right now that just dropped fire first albums.
Right.
And they loaded up to drop fire second ones too. The pressure's not only about writing the album, the pressure's about the competition. Because at that time in hip hop, right, whether anybody believed it or not, right, people were gonna compare groups to each other. They were gonna do that,
One of my
you
questions
know,
for you was, were
uh-huh.
you guys getting a lot of comparisons to EPMD at the time?
Um I wouldn't say so. I think because Strong Island was a laid back kind of song. And again, I feel like Long Island had a laid back kind of vibe when it came to rapping.
Hmm.
Rakim's vibe was laid back.
Hmm.
Um, Biz was a little ill, but on the same note, he wasn't like screaming in the mic all the time. Some of his songs was like, "Yes, y'all." So
Right.
I mean, I think that people that wasn't from Long Island might have at times tried to make that comparison and stuff like that. But I think that when it comes to all of us, I think that we were absolutely different. EPMD happens to be honest with you, they've always been like one of my favorite rap groups that come out of Long Island because
Mhm.
I can honestly say that not too many groups made like five phenomenal albums.
Yeah.
Um, and at the time they were making good music. So I mean, when people say, "Oh, you sound like this person or you sound like that person," um, I tell them like, "Hey, well, we're not that person or whatever." But at the end of the day, so I have a lot of respect for like those rappers.
Hmm.
You know, being from Long Island, it felt good and stuff like that. But truthfully, if I wasn't from Long Island, I would still have to sit in a Brooklyn or Queens or something and say to myself like, hey, you know what? They got some fire coming from out there.
Hmm. I think
You know.
for let's say for me at the time, or that not how can I say it? Yeah. So I think at that time, when you're looking and people aren't so familiar with Long Island, right?
Hmm.
I think because Rakim and, for example, they had that with Rakim and like Paris, right? Like, oh, they kind of sound the same or whatever. But I
Hmm.
felt that it was like you said, those outside of Long Island looking in, from the outside, like,
Yeah.
okay, we know EPMD, and then but now here's this other one. He kind of sounds like Rakim. Rakim was out front. You know what I mean? I think that's maybe what was going on more. Um,
It could have been. I think again back then with hip hop, Long Island was just as competitive as everyone else. There's
right.
no doubt about it that hip hop came from like the Bronx, started in the Bronx. The battles and everything else, the concept of everything, the b-boy, and it's no doubt where it came from. I think that the sound that different places had, and when we talk about Long Island having just a different sound,
Mhm.
I think the sounds changed, but I don't think the competitive nature ever changed.
Right.
Some of the things that I recall, like coming off of tours or a week of like doing shows and just wanting to stay home and just wanting to kind of like relax, like you're walking to the store, to go get yourself like a soda or something, and you just kind of want to just, see your hood again. And two
Yeah.
cats like jump out the side block, you know what I'm saying? They've been polishing their lyrics for like 3 months and now they want to battle. And,
Right. Right.
and again, the competitive nature is always there as an MC. You always have to like, write your albums and stuff like that. But at any given time, you have to be ready to spit a line or defend your crew or whatever you're going to do. And at that time the only way that certain cats knew how to be number one was to jump out and, challenge people number one. Like I said, the competitive nature of hip hop has never gone away.
Right.
The battling has always been a structure. We do it to this day. The URLs and stuff like that. They're spectacular.
Right.
It's
Right.
just,
Hmm.
but it's that nature. It's the whole. I'm gonna battle you, and if I beat you, then I'm gonna be the number one.
Right.
It's not gonna go away. It's still there today, even with the young people.
Right. 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 Now, something I wanted to ask you, as in reference to the song "Strong Island," as
Yeah.
successful as that song was then and became and still is now, when the success of that song started happening, do you feel that was it kind of a bittersweet almost? Like, do you feel that it overshadowed the rest of the album?
Um. No, I just felt, to be honest with you, I always just felt fortunate.
Hmm.
That even when we dropped that Doing Damage album, that Strong Island, because again, back then, no one would have known that it would have lasted 35 years. But
Right.
um, I was just fortunate at the time that, along with Strong Island, that album had enough for us to be able to go overseas
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
do a show where we normally always did shows by ourselves.
Hmm.
JVC was always booked in for a 60-minute show.
Okay.
Kirk Cazal, there would be no music in these shows until Kirk Cazal came out on the turntables and warmed
Okay.
it up. There'd be nobody after anything. All of our shows, a lot of times, were in, you know, overseas in event halls or whatever you want to call it. It wasn't like you were going into a club where people was dancing already. People was just standing around waiting for JVC for
Waiting
us.
for you guys. So okay, got you.
Yeah. So it was a lot easier back then, and like I say, it didn't really intimidate us or have us feeling any kind of way.
Hmm.
At least I can speak for myself. Like I said, I think when you're able to have the anthem song, I think it goes a long way, because I think that no matter how many albums someone can make or how many songs someone can make, I think that there's always that song out there that pen the place that we're from, and
Hell yeah.
and I think that the songs that was on the Doing Damage album, I think they were good supporting songs to do a tour with and to do a show with. Like, 4 to 5 of those songs off of Doing Damage album actually played on the radio,
Hmm.
whether it was the Red Alerts and all of that stuff, and or the Mr. Magics, the Marley Marls, the Chili Q's, or whoever it was. Or it's 5, 6 of those songs played. When you went up to Boston, the songs that wasn't playing in New York, like the Force is the Boss,
Hmm.
they was playing that, like Ray Benzino and Dave Mays and them on. They had a radio show back then. And it was attached to the Source magazine, which was coming out of Harvard in the dorm room, and
Right.
it was a one-page leaflet. And
Hmm.
I think they called us down there to be the first rap group, and just not just coming down there, but we didn't have any tour support or anything. It was something that we were like, hey, we're gonna take a chance. Like, this paper is as small as we are right now. You know what I mean? So if we could just get the label to give us a box of records to go ahead and sell in the record stores in Boston, we'll get some money to sleep in the hotels. That'd be the tour support. And
Right. Right.
we got a couple of boxes of records from the label. We, did some, sales out in Boston. But most important, we were guaranteed a place to sleep anywhere in Dave Mays, and I think at the time, the guy's last name was, I don't remember if it was Schechter or whatever his name was, but it was a partnership between them two.
Okay.
Um, and he said, I can't give you guys hotel rooms and all of that stuff, man. But he said, wherever you want to crash out in my dorm room, you can crash out. So it's one of them kind of deals, right?
Okay.
So along with that weekend, and I say all of this stuff to say is that again, it doesn't make me feel bad, because some of the experiences that we experienced as JVC, they weren't just show experiences and stuff. Now, this weekend led to us spending a whole weekend with, at the time, who would be known as the Almighty RSO.
Hmm.
Ray
Right.
Benzino
Right.
at the
Right.
time. Ray Benzino at the time was like 15 years old, driving a Camaro through the Boston streets. He didn't even have a license. They used to drive tight behind him so that he wouldn't get pulled. But the RSO, at the time, they were like a street gang or something. Like, them guys was a little notorious in the Boston area. So we got to spend the weekend with them. We got to hang out with them at they had a little underground radio station at the time, and they would bring out their MCs, and we got to. So the experience is like some of the people we got to meet. It wasn't just like we went to we couldn't go to a show or any. I mean, some of our things that we went to do. I mean, they were real life good experiences, man. And it's when you look back, you can say, well, hey, what if I didn't get this or I didn't get that and this, that, and the third. But I guess I got to be thankful that looking back, um,
Of course.
there's things that I can say like hey, we were one of the first groups in the Source magazine, and because things has come a long way, but never felt bad about that, man. Always felt like I wanted to meet people. I wanted
Hmm.
to see people. If people brought my CDs, I wanted to meet them. Um, there weren't, I wasn't like the type of person when I left Long Island, getting stopped in the streets everywhere I went. I didn't have a definitive look on myself like a KRS-One or a Big Daddy Kane.
Right, right.
People would always have to, say something like, hey, you know who this is? This is B Love. You ever heard that song Strong Island? I have to kind of jar it on them. But, like I say, for everybody that like, recognized the group and, took us along this voyage to at least, saying get to this point, we did something, man, coming along 35 years, man. So I've always just been thankful, man. And to this day, I still am thankful.
Nice, nice.
Before we wrap this album up, can you take us back to that photo shoot for the album cover?
That photo shoot for the album cover was funny. We went to, I think in the lyrics of Strong Island, you hear us saying things like, my lower closet's world of Bally and the upper's chess king. We had a chess king. We had a chess king in the Bayshore Mall, which was our frequent spot. Um, and we would buy clothes out of Chess King, and then we would go like to the city to like the World of Bali, and we'd buy clothes, and so we were doing these outfits, and we were deciding like one day, um, and it was just a day out of the week. It was just a random day. It was like we should just get dressed up today, and we should go take some photos. So we were the album wasn't even done or anything like that. It was just I think one of our normal antics like that. We went to the mall, we bought clothes. I think at the time the South Shore Mall had some sophisticated stores like the Benetton and stuff like that. So we went, we bought all of this stuff, but we needless to say we dressed up and we were recording a song in the studio at the time doing Damage. Um, we had the beat together, we had everything, and we were supposed to go drop the lyrics. We knew that the album was gonna be called Doing Damage, and that was the album cut. So we're riding now. We were on the way to New York Tech, and we were
Mm.
riding down Spur Drive in Central Islip, and we had on like these this clothes, sweaters, Benetton shirt, Benetton sweater, like um, Benetton pants, everything. AJ had on like his Vascos, and Kurt had on like his sweater, and and then we passed this car, and the car is sitting there on the side of the road, like just abandoned. So we're saying to ourselves, like like if we bust the window on that car and we go stand on it, can we catch the picture real quick? That might be kind of cool.
Okay.
So we had our little camera guy, so we figured out a way. We busted the window on the car because if you realize with the photo, we were kind of like facing like the windshield
Okay.
busted and stuff. So
Right, right.
so so we're facing the windshield. We catch the picture and stuff like that. And we went to New York Tech after that, and we took a gang of pictures, man. But CI at the time, they had a little photo mat or whatever photo booth or photo mat in the Seatown parking lot. We went and got these pictures developed, and when we went to seeing the pictures and stuff like that, we determined that that was going to be the picture. The album was going to be called Doing Damage, and that was a great picture for it. Um, that
Nice.
album, that album, we had to do all of the artwork and everything else on it. Like I said, B-Boy never really gave us a budget because they never really got in the middle of our creativity. So all of that stuff was formulated, and the thoughts was all JVC. Yeah.
Very dope.
Sincere, one day when you come out this way, man, I got to take you to Central Islip. When you see how what, well, I mean, I guess there's still certain part, but back in the days, you know what I mean. I know for sure that Central Islip, like so, be love. I told you I was in
Hmm. Yeah.
Long Beach, which is Nassau, right?
Uh
Nassau
huh.
County.
Oh
At
yeah.
that time, Suffolk for us was like, man, that's way, you know, it's like way out in Long Island. Well, you know, sometimes they would call it, you know, pardon me, everybody, no disrespect.
I used to
But
be down your way, man, on Lido
sometimes they would
Boulevard.
say the sticks, you know, they would call it the sticks sometimes, joking
Uh huh.
around. So like we would trek, you know, out that way sometimes for like a house party or
Yeah.
something, not really
Yeah.
knowing that we wouldn't have going, you know, not knowing what we were really going into. But if you go there, I have to take you this and see, and you'll see that the picture of the album cover.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I don't know, like what you would think if you saw it, right? Like, what's the background? Is like grass and trees and stuff like that. But if I take you to Central Islip, it'll make a lot of sense to you.
Yeah.
Dope.
It'll
Dope.
make a lot of sense.
Like I said at the top of the interview, the album turns 35. Uh, dropped in 1988. From your point of view, what was so magical about 88? I mean, everything that dropped, every group that came out was original. Were you seeing this firsthand? Were you in the moment? What about 1988 was so special?
1988 was a special year because I think it was the year that I graduated from high school. So it was already a feeling of going to college and feeling like a man. I'm gonna be on my own and stuff like that. Um, Hip hop had structure. I mean, 88 to be honest with you, man, it was just feeling good, man. I mean, the Freakniks was running through New York. I know that's a popular topic right
Yeah, I
now.
know.
The Freakniks was running through New York, I think around 88, you know what I'm saying? I mean, most of us had like we gotten the driver's license and we were rolling out now. Manhood was beginning. But most important, man, having a record to come out at that time. It was magical, man. Like I said, it wasn't about the uh, wanting to be, this big thing and stuff like. It was more about like, being a fan of hip hop and wanting to, have your spot on the radio. There was exciting times back then, man. Like, every rap group, used to sit back and like wait for the radio to with their time slot. The years of waiting with your cassette to record so that you can
Yeah,
record your song. And it was just hip hop was different. Music meant a lot more to folks. Back then, all of the popular rap songs came with a dance. All of the artists had an image. Parties was good, man. We men guys was dancing with girls. We was really going to the party, wanting to go get girls. And don't get me wrong, I don't really, get in the middle of like, the sexuality conversation. When I
Right.
say that to say, I mean that now hip hop,
People
the
play the
girls is
wall.
on this,
Yeah,
yeah, the
right.
girls is on this side, the guys is on this side, everybody's going like this.
right, right.
I
Yeah.
had to I had to record some music today and download some music today, man, and things has really, really changed, man. Like, when we had songs and we wrote our three verses along with our choruses, it took up again 2, 3 sheets of paper. A song was about like 5 minutes.
Hmm.
The radio version back then was about 3:39. Nowadays, you know what I mean, songs are naturally, without even being a radio version, just like 2 minutes and 29 seconds.
That's long.
Right. And but
Yeah.
Very dope.
times change, but
Yeah, we want to
mhm.
thank you so much
Yes,
for
sir.
dropping knowledge on doing damage for everybody watching.
Yes,
Be
sir.
sure to get out your cassettes, your CDs, revisit this classic album, and we appreciate everything that you've done for the culture. Be love, everything that JVC Force means to hip hop. Anything E you want to add
Yes,
to that?
sir, man.
I just want to say, man, since I'm able to speak to you, I want to say thank you very much because not only the album, but I just want to talk about that song "Strong Island." It was and still is.
Thank
It
you,
was
man.
very impactful for us. I got to give my boy Al Quest a shout out because he was one of the persons that like You know, me and him shared that love for the song. Whenever it came
Thank you,
on,
man.
you know, we would always like, yo, dude, I'm kind of holding back. I'm not gonna lie to you. Like that
I
song
appreciate you,
means
man.
meant and means the world to us because again, with Long Beach, and you're hearing so much hip hop, you're hearing so many things. So, and you know, at the time, like everybody used to have a song or something that represented their borough or their neighborhood or something like that. So to hear something screaming out Strong Island, bro, like
Hmm.
it
Yes,
because think of,
sir.
I think besides that song, and I, you know, the only thing that comes to mind right away, like without really trying to think, is when Rakim said "rough enough to break, uh, rough enough to break New York from Long Island." Like when we heard that, it was like, oh, you know, like yeah.
Yeah, man. Like
And those
like
are
for
the two
me,
only things that jump out real quick. So thank
yeah.
you, man. Thank you.
You're welcome, man. I want to tell you though, man. For me, it was when it was up your way, man. It was when Chuck D turned around and said, "Strong Island, where I got 'em wildin'."
That's
You know,
okay. That's another one. That was another
that
one.
had to that
Right,
had to
right, right.
be that had to be broadcasted, man. And Chuck told me, man. He
Yeah,
said, look, that song needed to be heard, man. Great song. So I
yeah.
thank you for that, man. And
No,
from the
seriously,
bottom of my
seriously.
from the bottom of my heart, man, like I would tell everyone, or I appreciate you, man, for feeling that way genuinely. Because again, JVC is not a great big group, but we've been able to stay around with the support of folks like you, and again, we'll never stop, communicating and giving you guys our heart. Even though we don't make music anymore, still hold a special place, and you always will,
It
man.
still
So,
lives on. It still lives
all
on,
right,
man. It still
yes,
lives on.
sir.
Thank you, thank you.
Mhm.
So, be loved once again. Thank you on behalf of Change of the Hip Hop Guards, myself and Sincere for everything you have done. It's been a pleasure. Let's catch up in the near future.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. Would love
Peace.
to.
All right.
Peace.